The obsidian throne room of the Zorathian Empire hummed with restrained power, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadows. Floating plasma orbs cast shifting blue light across the assembled war council, their armored forms standing at rigid attention. At the center of it all, Emperor Vexthal loomed on his throne, a grotesque monument carved from the skull of the last Kralix warlord, its hollow eye sockets now filled with pulsating biotech. His 6 glowing eyes swept over the gathered nobles, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. Ambassador Elias Carter stood apart from the Zorathian elite, his simple grey suit stark against their iridescent chitin and jeweled battle harnesses. The human delegation had been granted an audience, though the sneers of the court made it clear they were considered little more than a formality. Elias clenched his jaw as the Emperor's voice boomed across the chamber, reverberating through the polished black stone. "The decree is final," Vexthal announced, one clawed hand gesturing to the holographic star map hovering above the central dais. Earth spun lazily in the projection, its surface marred by glowing red zones labeled in harsh Zorathian script, low-value zones, unclaimed territory wastelands. Elias stepped forward before the court herald could silence him. "Your Majesty, those wastelands are sovereign human territory. The Third World War left scars, but our people still live there. This isn't colonization, it's an act of war." Laughter rippled through the nobles, a sound like grinding metal. High Admiral Kraxil detached himself from the ranks, his 4 arms folded across his beetle, like chestplate. "War implies a contest," he sneered. "Your species barely clings to life in those ruins. We've scanned your so-called cities, radiation, ruined infrastructure. No centralized government by galactic law. Such territories are open for claiming." Elias' fingers twitched toward the concealed datapad in his sleeve. Had seen the Zorathian scans, crude orbital sweeps that missed the underground arcologies, the shielded hydroponic farms, the fusion reactors buried deep beneath the rubble. They'd looked at the surface and seen only death. "Your civilization is dust," Vexthal declared, rising from his throne. The biotech in the skull throne pulsed in time with his voice. "We take what we wish. Your kind will serve or perish." A murmur of approval ran through the court. Sub-Commander Zix, one of the few Zorathians not joining the jeers, shifted uneasily near the back. His secondary arms fidgeted with a data slate, its screen flickering with intercepted human transmissions, fragments of coded chatter between resistance cells. Elias forced his voice to remain steady. "You're making a mistake. Earth's wounds run deep, but we're not extinct. Touch our soil, and you'll learn why humanity survived the fire in the first place." Kraxil barked a sharp laugh. "Brave words for a man whose planet is already dead. We've seen your history. Nuclear winter, bioweapons. You tore yourselves apart. The galaxy is better off with your wastelands under proper management." The Emperor's claws tapped against the armrest of his throne, a sound like knives on bone. "Enough. The first landing ships deploy at next cycle. Ambassador Carter, you may remain as an observer, if you swear fealty." Elias met the Emperor's gaze without flinching. "I'll watch," he said softly, "but not as your subject, as your judge." The throne room erupted in outrage, Zorathian nobles hissing through their respiratory vents. Vexthal's eyes burned brighter, but he waved off the guards, stepping toward Elias. "Let him bear witness when our banners fly over your ruins. Perhaps then you'll understand the futility of defiance." As Elias was escorted from the chamber, Sub-Commander Zix caught his arm near the towering obsidian doors. The younger Zorathian's voice was barely audible over the din of the court. "They didn't scan deep enough, did they?" Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes was all the confirmation Zix required. Outside, the orbital platforms were already stirring, dropships detaching like spores from a fungal bloom. Elias watched them through the transparent alloy of the observation deck, his reflection superimposed over the armada. Somewhere on Earth, in the ruins of Chicago, Captain Maravos would be waiting. And she never waited unarmed. The dropship Conqueror's Maw descended through Earth's toxic atmosphere, its armored belly glowing orange from re-entry heat. Inside, 50 Zarathian shock troops checked their pulse rifles, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Their commander, Subjugator Crix, adjusted the targeting display in his beetle-like helmet. The holographic overlay labeled their landing zone as Chicago Ruin Cluster, Sector Faye. Remember, Crix broadcast over the squad channel. These softskins are barely sentient, sweep and clear. Any resistance gets the plasma torch. The troops chuckled, their exoskeletons rattling. Below them, the ruins stretched for miles. Collapsed skyscrapers, shattered highways, the skeletal remains of a dead city. Radiation warnings flashed on their HUDs, but Crix dismissed them. The Zarathian Empire had conquered far worse. The Maw touched down in what had once been Grant Park, its landing struts crushing the remains of a rusted Ferris wheel. The ramp hissed open, revealing a wasteland of grey ash and twisted metal. Crix led the way, his armored boots sinking slightly into the irradiated soil. "Pathetic," he muttered. "This planet's already dead. Why waste our time?" His second in-command drone, Lord Vex, scanned the area with enhanced optics. "The Emperor wants it. That is reason enough." The squad fanned out, pulse rifles humming as they swept for threats. Nothing moved except the wind carrying dust and the faint scent of ozone. Crix kicked aside a broken sign, "Welcome to Chicago," and snorted, "This place is a tomb." Then the first mine detonated. The explosion ripped through the center of the formation, sending 2 Zarathians flying in pieces. Crix barely had time to register the blast before gunfire erupted from the ruins. High-velocity rounds that punched through armor like paper. "Ambush," Vex screamed, diving behind a collapsed concrete slab. "They're using our tech against us." Crix snarled, activating his helmet's thermal vision. Figures emerged from the rubble, clad in scavenged armor and rebreathers. Their leader, a human female with a scar across her forehead, leveled a jury-rigged plasma cannon. "Welcome to Earth," Captain Maravos said over the Zarathians' comms, her voice crackling through their hacked frequencies. Population pissed off. The Chicago irregulars struck like ghosts. Railgun emplacements hidden in the ruins opened fire, shredding Zarathian armor. Grenades arced from broken windows, their concussive blasts knocking warriors off their feet. Crix watched in horror as his squad was systematically dismantled by creatures he'd been told were primitive. "Fall back," he ordered, firing wildly into the dust. "Regroup at the LZ," Voss's laughter echoed through his helmet. "You think we'd let you leave?" The Conqueror's Maw erupted in flames as a hidden missile battery struck its engines. The dropship listed sideways, its fuel cells detonating in a chain reaction that lit up the sky. Crix felt the heat wash over him, his chitin blistering. Vex grabbed his arm. "Commander, the tunnels." A sniper round took Vex's head off before he could finish. Crix stumbled back, his HUD flashing warnings. Half his squad was already dead, the rest pinned down by precision fire. These weren't desperate survivors. This was a military operation. "Lies," Crix spat. The report said. A boot slammed into his back, knocking him face first into the dirt. He rolled over to see Voss standing above him, her plasma cannon humming at his throat. "Report said we were broken," she said, her rebreather distorting her voice into something monstrous. "Report said we'd roll over. Funny thing about humans, Bug, we don't know when to quit." Crix's last thought, before the plasma blast erased him, was that the Emperor had made a terrible mistake. Around him, the ruins burned. The irregulars moved like shadows, finishing off the survivors. On a nearby wall, barely visible beneath the ash graffiti from a child's hand read, "They think we're dead. Joke's on them." In orbit, the Worldbreaker registered the loss of the Conqueror's Maw and its entire complement. High Admiral Craxil frowned at the report, then deleted it. Minor resistance, he told his bridge crew. Nothing to concern us. Far below, in the ruins of Chicago, Mara Voss reloaded her weapon and smiled. "Round 1 to us," she murmured. "Let's see how they like round 2. The bridge of the Worldbreaker hummed with the quiet efficiency of Zorathian command. Holographic displays flickered blue and gold, projecting casualty reports from the surface below. High Admiral Kraxil loomed over the tactical table, his chitinous fingers tapping impatiently against the polished obsidian surface. The forearms of his command suit flexed as he reviewed the data, his 6 eyes narrowing at the numbers scrolling past. "Insignificant," Kraxil muttered, dismissing the latest casualty report with a flick of his wrist. The hologram dissolved into pixels. "A few lost patrols, scavengers picking at our heels." Subcommander Zix hesitated near the edge of the command platform, his mandibles twitching. Unlike the High Admiral, his carapace bore no battle honors, only the fresh scars of a junior officer promoted too soon. "Sir," he ventured, "the attacks are too coordinated. The humans..." Kraxil's backhand struck before Zix could finish. The impact sent the younger officer stumbling back, blue blood welling from a split in his facial plating. The bridge crew didn't react. They knew better. "Animals," Kraxil snarled, his voice a deep, grating rasp. "They scurry in the dark and nip at our boots. That is all." He turned back to the holograms, expanding a map of the Chicago ruins. Red markers pulsed where patrols had gone silent. "Burn the sectors, clear the nests." Zix wiped the blood from his jaw, his voice quieter now. "Sir, with respect, our thermal scans show movement in every ruin. Not just Chicago, Moscow, Shanghai, the old American capital. They're everywhere." Kraxil exhaled through his spiracles. A sound like grinding stone. "You think I fear vermin?" He gestured to the fleet display. Hundreds of ships in orbit, thousands of warriors on the surface. "We have crushed civilizations that spanned star systems. These humans are nothing." A new alert flashed on the main screen. Another outpost gone dark, this one in the ruins of Berlin, then another Tokyo, then 3 more in rapid succession. The bridge's ambient lighting shifted as the system registered the losses, bathing the crew in a faint, uneasy red. Zix's voice was barely audible. "They're not running, sir." Kraxil didn't answer at first. His eyes locked onto the feed from Berlin, grainy footage from a dying soldier's helmet cam, shadows moving in the rubble. A voice, human, whispering something before the feed cut to static. "Sir," a tactical officer called, "we're receiving reports of silence." Kraxil's roar echoed through the bridge. He seized the edge of the holographic table, his claws digging into the projection. The image of Earth flickered under his grip. "They want to play at war. Fine." He turned to the weapons officer. "Prepare the orbital lances. Target every ruin showing resistance." Zix stiffened. "Sir, the Emperor's decree. We were to colonize, not glass. The Emperor is not here." Kraxil's voice dropped to a venomous hiss. "I will erase their defiance. Let them choke on their pride." The weapons officer hesitated, his manipulators hovering over the firing console. "Admiral, we're detecting energy spikes from the surface, multiple locations." Kraxil's eyes flicked to the new data, strange signatures. Not human, not anything in the Imperial database. Deep underground, pulsing, growing. Zix took a step back. "They're not just hiding down there," he whispered. "They're waiting." The first explosion lit up the night side of Earth like a dying star. Then another and another. Kraxil's comm crackled to life. A human voice, calm amid the chaos. "You misunderstand," it said. "This was never your world." The bridge lights went red. Alarms screamed. And for the first time in his long, brutal career, High Admiral Kraxil felt something cold and unfamiliar coil in his gut. The Zorathian Legion marched in perfect formation, their beetle-black armor clanking against the broken concrete of the rocky mountain pass. High Commander Vexgal led the column, his 6 eyes scanning the jagged cliffs through his helmet's thermal overlay. Nothing moved but the wind. "Pathetic," he hissed into the comms. "The humans hide in holes like vermin." His troops chuckled, their mandibles clicking in unison. The intelligence reports had been clear. This was the last stronghold of the Chicago Irregulars, a ragtag band of survivors too stubborn to die. The Empire's scanners had detected heat signatures deep within the mountain, a final nest to crush. Sub-Commander Zix hesitated at the cavern entrance, his grip tightening on his plasma rifle. "Sir, the terrain is..." "Silence," Vexal snapped. "You let insects frighten you." He gestured forward. "Move, burn, everything." The Legion advanced, their boots kicking up dust as they funneled into the narrow tunnel. The darkness swallowed them whole, their helmet lamps casting flickering shadows on the ancient rock. The air smelled of rust and something sharper, ozone. Deep in the mountain, Captain Mara Voss watched the Zarathians on a cracked monitor. The feed came from a dozen hidden cameras, each one jury, rigged from scavenged parts. She smirked, tapping the detonator in her palm. "Think they'll scream?" Private Rook asked, adjusting his rebreather. Voss didn't look away from the screen. "Nah, they'll just pop." The Zarathians reached the first chamber, a vast hollow space where stalactites hung like teeth. Vexgal raised a fist, signaling the column to halt. His thermal scanners flickered, ghost images fading in and out. "Trap?" a trooper asked. Vexgal snorted. "If it is, it's a poor one." He stomped forward, his armored foot crushing a small metal box hidden in the rubble. A red light blinked once, then the world turned blue. The fusion charges detonated in sequence, a chain reaction that turned the mountain's belly into a sun. The shockwave ripped through the Zarathian ranks, vaporizing the front lines instantly. Those further back were liquefied by the pressure, their armor crumpling like foil. Vexgal had half a second to scream before the fire took him. Outside, the mountain shuddered. A plume of superheated gas erupted from the tunnel mouth, followed by a roar that shook the valley. Rock slides buried the Zarathian reserves waiting at the base, their panicked shouts cut short under tons of stone. Voss watched the fireworks from a kilometer away, the heat warming her face. She keyed her comm. "All stations, this is Voss. Package delivered." Static crackled before Admiral Carter's voice came through. "Confirmed. Good hunting, Captain." Rook whistled, staring at the burning mountain. "Damn, they really walked right in." Voss holstered her pistol. "Yeah, like idiots." She turned to her squad, their faces lit by the distant fire. "Let's go. Plenty more graves to dig." The Zarathian command channel erupted in chaos. "Worldbreaker, this is Forward Command. We've lost contact with Legion 7. High Admiral Craxel gripped the armrests of his throne. Like chair, his 4 hands denting the metal. "Impossible scan again." The bridge crew scrambled, their appendages flying over holographic displays. One by one, the outposts on Earth's surface winked out. Chicago, Denver, St. Louis, each one falling silent in rapid succession. "Sir," a sensor officer stammered, "they're gone, all of them." Craxel's carapace darkened with rage. "What do you mean gone?" The main screen flickered, then resolved into a grainy transmission. A human in a scavenged envirosuit stood amidst burning Zarathian wreckage, holding up a helmet, Vexgal's helmet. "Hey Bugs," the human said, tossing the helmet aside. "You colonized wastelands," he grinned. "No, you walked into your graves." The feed cut out. Silence gripped the bridge. Craxel slowly turned to the junior officer who had warned him days earlier. Sub-Commander Zix said nothing. He didn't need to. The Admiral's voice was a whisper. "What have we done?" On Earth, the survivors emerged from their hideouts. They gathered on rooftops in ruined streets, watching the smoke rise from the mountains. A child picked up a piece of shrapnel, still warm, and tossed it into a growing pile of Zorathian debris. Someone started laughing, then another. Soon, the sound spread like wildfire. Voss keyed the open channel, her voice echoing across every Zorathian frequency. "Welcome to Earth," she said. "Population pissed off." Far above, the stars burned cold and silent, but on the ground, in the wastelands, they had thought dead. Something stirred, something hungry. The bridge of the Worldbreaker shuddered as another explosion rocked the ship. Emergency lights bathed the cavernous command center in pulsing crimson, casting jagged shadows across the terrified faces of the Zorathian crew. High Admiral Kraxel gripped the edges of his command console, his chitinous fingers denting the metal. His four eyes darted across the holographic displays, each one flashing with disaster reports. "Report," Kraxel snarled. His voice a guttural growl. Sub-Commander Zix stumbled forward, his carapace smeared with blue blood from a gash above his primary eye cluster. "Outpost Gamma. 9 just went dark. Admiral, the humans hit their fusion reactors. Total collapse." Kraxel's mandibles twitched. "Impossible, Gamma. 9 was buried under 2 kilometers of rock." Zix hesitated, his secondary arms trembling. They tunneled, used old mining equipment to plant charges beneath the foundations. A new alert blared across the bridge. Another sector of the orbital grid vanished from the tactical display. Then another. Kraxel watched, his gut churning, as the hologram of Earth's surface lit up with red markers, each one a Zorathian position being systematically erased. "Admiral," a junior officer's voice cracked with panic. "We're receiving a transmission from the surface." Kraxel whirled. "Put it through." The main view screen flickered to life. Grainy footage showed a line of Zorathian warriors in battered armor, their limbs shackled with crude but effective restraints. Behind them stood human fighters, their faces obscured by scarred rebreathers. One stepped forward, pulling off her mask, Captain Mara Voss, her face streaked with soot and blood, her grin sharp as a knife. "Hey, Kraxel," she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "You look like you're having a bad day." Kraxel's claws flexed. "You dare?" Voss cut him off with a laugh. "Oh, we dare. See, you thought you were landing on wastelands. But here's the thing about humans. We don't abandon our homes, we just make them deadly." The feed cut to another location, a ruined cityscape where Zorathian bodies littered the streets. A human sniper, perched atop a crumbling skyscraper, waved at the camera before vanishing into the shadows. Another cut, a subterranean bunker, its walls lined with scavenged Zorathian weapons, now aimed at their own creators. A child, no older than 10, sat cross-legged on a pile of discarded power armor, calmly eating a ration bar. The final image was the worst. Emperor Vexthal's personal banner, torn and burning, trampled under the boots of human soldiers. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Then the Emperor's face filled the screen, his 6 eyes burning with fury. "Kraxel," he hissed. "You told me they were broken. You assured me they would kneel." Kraxel's throat tightened. "My Emperor, their resistance was not in our projections." Projections. Vexthal's roar shook the speakers. "You lost half our forces to scavengers." Zix stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. "With respect, Majesty, they are not scavengers, they are predators, and we walked right into their den." Kraxel backhanded him, sending the sub-commander crashing to the deck. Silence. He turned back to the screen. "I will rectify this, my Emperor. I will burn their nests to ash." Vexthal's glare could have melted steel. "You have one cycle, fail me again, and I will feed you to the royal broodmothers." The screen went black. Kraxel turned to his crew, his voice a deathly whisper. "Prepare the orbital bombardment arrays. Target every human settlement, every ruin, every cave, every scrap of land where they might hide. Zix pulled himself up, his voice raw. "Admiral, we don't know where they're hiding. Their signatures are masked, their movements erratic. If we fire blindly, then we glass the entire continent," Kraxel roared. "I will not return to the Emperor in disgrace." A new alarm screamed through the bridge. The tactical officer's voice was shrill with terror. "Admiral, multiple contacts emerging from the asteroid belt." There, the world-breaker lurched violently as something huge slammed into its shields. The view screen flickered, then resolved into an image that turned Kraxel's blood to ice. A ship, massive, blackened, its hull scorched from solar-forge construction, along its flank faded but unmistakable. Were the letters USN Retribution? Zix whispered what Kraxel already knew. Oh no. The human fleet had arrived. The remnants of the Zerathian fleet drifted in high orbit, their once proud warships now scarred and limping. High Admiral Kraxel gripped the command rail of the Worldbreaker, his chitinous fingers denting the metal. The bridge was bathed in the crimson glow of emergency lights, the air thick with the acrid stench of burnt circuits and fear. "Status report," Kraxel barked, his voice a guttural snarl. Sub-Commander Zix, his exoskeleton still cracked from Kraxel's earlier strike, hesitated before answering. 30% combat readiness. "Admiral, the human guerrillas hit our supply depots before we even knew they were there. Our ground forces are gone," Kraxel finished, his 6 eyes narrowing. The holographic displays flickered, showing the last of their outposts on Earth being overrun. The humans had moved like ghosts, striking from the ruins they called home. A junior officer stumbled forward, his antennae twitching. "Admiral, long-range sensors detect an incoming vessel," Kraxel scoffed. "Another human junkie, blast it and be done?" The officer's mandibles trembled. "Sir, it's bigger." The Worldbreaker's massive viewport filled with darkness, then light. A ship slid into view, its hull blackened as if forged in the heart of a star. It dwarfed the Zerathian flagship, its prow sharp as a blade. Along its flank, scorched but unmistakable, were the letters USN Retribution. Kraxel's blood ran cold. Impossible. They had no fleet. On the Retribution's bridge, Admiral Elias Carter stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The scars on his face caught the dim light as he watched the Zerathian ship scramble. "Target the Worldbreaker," he said, his voice calm. "Single shot. Let's make it count." The Retribution's spinal, mounted railgun hummed to life, charging with a sound like a gathering storm. Deep in the ship's core, capacitors whined as energy built to a crescendo. On the Worldbreaker, alarms shrieked. "Evasive maneuvers," Kraxel roared, too late. The railgun fired. A streak of hyper-accelerated tungsten lit up the void, crossing the distance in a heartbeat. The Worldbreaker's shields flared, then shattered. The round punched through armor, decks, reactors, and out the other side in a spray of molten debris. For a single, frozen moment, Kraxel saw his reflection in the cracking viewport. Then the Worldbreaker split in two. The explosion silent in the vacuum. Across Earth, survivors looked up as fire rained from the sky. The wreckage of the Zerathian fleet burned up in the atmosphere, streaks of blue and green against the dawn. In the ruins of Chicago, Captain Mara Voss lowered her binoculars and grinned. "Told you they'd come," she said to her squad. On the Retribution, Carter watched the last Zorathian cruiser surrender, its engines dead. He opened a channel to the planet below. "Earth," he said. "This is Admiral Carter of the United Earthspace Navy. The skies are yours again." The response was immediate. Cheers, sobs, the sound of a people who had been counted out but refused to die. In the ruins of 100 cities, humans emerged from the shadows, their faces turned upward. On the bridge of the Retribution, A young ensign turned to Carter. "Sir, what now?" Carter's smile was thin. "Now we remind the galaxy why you don't kick a hornet's nest." Below them, Earth burned, not with defeat, but with defiance. The wastelands had spoken, and the universe would listen. The Galactic Senate chamber fell silent as the holographic displays flickered to life. The last images of the Zorathian flagship Worldbreaker breaking apart in Earth's orbit played on loop. Ambassador Elias Carter stood at the human delegation's newly assigned podium, his grey suit crisp against the sea of alien diplomats in their glittering robes and armored carapaces. The Zorathian delegation sat motionless, their chitinous faces unreadable, but their twitching antennae betrayed their shock. Carter let the silence stretch. Let them stew, let them remember. "You were told," he began, his voice calm but carrying, "that Earth was a wasteland, that humanity was broken, that we would serve or perish." He tapped a control on the podium. The display shifted to show the ruins of Chicago. But now, human fighters moved through the rubble, dragging captured Zorathian shock troops in chains. "You were wrong." A murmur rippled through the Senate. The Vespidian ambassador's wings buzzed nervously. The Sorelian delegation's floating orbs dimmed in what might have been shame. "You came for easy conquest," Carter continued. "You thought our scars meant weakness, that our ruins meant defeat." The display changed again, this time to the Retribution, its blackened hull still glowing faintly from the heat of Mercury's forges. But Earth's wastelands are where we learned, where we adapted high above. The Senate's observation deck was packed with spectators. Among them, Captain Mara Voss leaned against the railing, her arms crossed. A fresh scar ran from her temple to her jaw, a souvenir from the Rocky Mountain redoubt. Next to her, Admiral Carter, no relation to the ambassador, grinned. "Told you he'd make 'em sweat," the Admiral muttered. Voss snorted. "They're not sweating yet." Down below, the Zorathian Prime Legate finally stood, his 6 eyes burning with fury. "This is outrageous," he hissed. "You dare parade your petty victories before the Senate? You are nothing, a backwater species who got lucky." Ambassador Carter didn't flinch. "Luck," he tilted his head. "Was it luck when your legions walked into our tunnels? When your Worldbreaker took a railgun round to the bridge? Or was that strategy?" The legate's mandibles twitched. "You scavengers, Carter agreed. "Survivors, winners." He tapped the podium again. The display shifted to a star map, human colonies, hidden bases, shipyards tucked into asteroid belts. The Zorathian Empire declared war on a wasteland, but you didn't realize we've been at war longer than you've had spaceflight. The Cereleon ambassador floated forward, her orbs pulsing with cautious interest. "What do you propose, Ambassador? Revenge?" Carter smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. No, recognition. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded banner. With a flick of his wrist, it unfurled, black, with a silver phoenix rising from flames. "Humanity is done being your afterthought. We are a sovereign power." "And this," he nodded to a Senate aide, who hurried forward to take the banner. "This goes up next to yours." The chamber erupted. Some delegates shouted protests. Others, smaller species, ones who had known Zorathian aggression, cheered. The Vespidian ambassador's wings buzzed louder. "You can't just declare yourself a galactic power." "Watch us," Carter said. Admiral Carter, watching from above, chuckled. "That's my cue." He tapped his comm. "Senate security. This is Admiral Carter. Deploy the honor guard." The chamber doors slid open. A dozen human soldiers marched in, their armor polished, their rifles slung but visible, not a threat. A reminder, the Zorathian legate recoiled. "You bring armed troops into the Senate." "Honor guard," Ambassador Carter corrected, standard for recognized sovereign powers. He glanced at the banner, now being raised beside the Federation standard. "And as of today, that's us, silence. Then, from the back of the chamber, slow, deliberate applause. The Cerulean ambassador, her orbs bright with something like respect. Well played, human. Ambassador Carter inclined his head. We've had practice. The legate snarled, but the moment was gone. The Senate speaker, a towering Octavian, raised her tentacles for order. The motion for human recognition is hereby acknowledged. All in favor. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. As the session adjourned, Captain Voss finally pushed off the railing. So, what now? Admiral Carter grinned. Now we rebuild. Properly this time. He nodded to the banner, now hanging in its place of honor. And next time some empire thinks our wastelands are up for grabs, Voss cracked her knuckles. We remind them below. Ambassador Carter gathered his notes. The Zerathian legate stormed past, hissing. This isn't over. Human Carter didn't look up. No, he agreed. It's just beginning. Outside the Senate chambers, the galaxy watched, and for the first time in centuries, it worried.